Paranormal Romance, Alpha Bear in the Backwoods. Written by Cynthia Mendoza. Narrated by Rebecca Wolfe. Chapter 1. The fire crackled in the stone fireplace, and Thomas stretched his legs out across the leather ottoman. He let out a satisfied groan as the warmth of the fire traveled through his bones. The North Carolina winter had hit particularly hard this year, and now that November was here, even Thomas struggled to face the world outside. Not only did the shapeshifter's ursine instincts beg him for hibernation, but so too did his human ones. Every inch of his body fought the need to move around in the cold weather. It was the one thing he hated about living in such a seasonal state. With that said, it was certainly much easier to isolate himself living in the woods of western North Carolina than it would be in somewhere like Florida. There were enough woodlands in Carolina to lose an army, let alone a single bear shifter in a cabin. The wind whistled loudly under the door of the log cabin, and with a grumble, Thomas got to his feet. He shuffled over to the front of the house. Rolling up the rug by the front door, he shoved it against the crack where the wind was coming in. He'd been meaning to fix that door all summer, yet somehow he'd never gotten around to it. He stopped and listened. The whistling had stopped. Satisfied with the fix, he made his way to the kitchen to make himself some tea. Something to warm him from the inside out. As big as he may have been, it only served as more of him to catch a chill, rather than more of him to keep him warm. As he passed by the window over the kitchen sink, something outside caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a cardinal. Whatever it was bright red and flitted quickly between the trees. It was at least a couple of 100 feet out. And no sooner had he caught sight of it than it was gone. Thomas leaned in over the sink and stared intently into the woods. Just as he was about to give up hope, he saw it again. This time, it looked much bigger than a cardinal. Much, much bigger than a cardinal. Someone was encroaching on his private isolation. Nothing irritated him more than anyone, coming onto his land. He lived in isolation for good reason. Pushing the window open, he stuck his head out as far as he could. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice disappearing into the wind, the cold winter air nearly stealing his breath away as he opened his mouth to speak again. "Hey, you!" he shouted again. The fleeting figure vanished completely. Thomas pulled the window closed. What the hell are they doing out here? He asked himself as he filled the kettle with water. It better not be any more damn kids. Or worse, loggers. He stood over the kettle. Despite the land he lived on being distinctly marked as private property, Thomas once in a while encountered a trespasser. His least favorite of which were loggers inspecting the area to ensure that Thomas was within his property boundaries. This excuse always made Thomas clench his jaw, because he knew for a fact that none of the land close to his cabin was open for logging. It didn't take much to irritate Thomas, however. He wasn't generally a people kind of person. Since he had moved out to his cabin paradise, Thomas had very little interaction with people at all. For the most part, they simply didn't venture out that far into the woods. Once in a while, when one of the trespassers would stumble upon his cabin, Thomas knew just what to do to get rid of them quickly. It was the solitude of the cabin that had lured Thomas into buying it in the first place. For years, he had struggled to find a comfortable life in the city. But the city was no place for a bear shifter. Even with the control he exerted over his ursine form, Thomas found an instinctive pull to more natural surroundings. He needed to be somewhere where he didn't have to worry about his secret being uncovered. He longed to be somewhere he could be free. When he stumbled upon the cabin, there was no doubt that it was built just for him. Thomas bought it the very same day, and within 2 days he had moved in completely. Since then, he had enjoyed the silence and infrequent intrusion of others that his new home brought. Thomas was just sitting back down in front of the fire when again something caught his eye once more. This time, it was through the living room window. Setting his tea down with a loud sigh, Thomas leapt from his chair and grabbed the shotgun off the living room wall. He had no idea who he was about to meet, but they had been skulking around his property long enough to make him suspicious. Kicking the rug from the front door, he unbolted the door and threw it open. The brisk winter air slapped him in the face as he stepped onto the front porch. "Who's there?"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?